All right, welcome out to the training webinar tonight. I'm Shade Foray with Tax Sale Support. I think Stephen Swenson's here as well.
Yep, I'm here. Excited to be here.
Excellent. We are conducting a tax sale webinar tonight about online tax sale investing and other forms of tax sale investing. And yeah, we're happy to have everybody join us here tonight. As we mentioned before, you're free to ask questions here throughout the event, and we try to answer them whenever it works out best. So the first thing we should probably talk about is just a brief overview about who we are. Chances are you probably came in contact with us through maybe YouTube, I would guess. It seems like that's where we've had a lot of contact, but we've worked with thousands of people across the United States over the years, tens of thousands. And so we also have a lot of people we've worked with in the past that oftentimes end up coming back. The history on us, I guess, if I were to give a quick 30-second speech here on it, Steve and I are cousins. We got involved with tax sales it's probably coming up on 20 years ago. Was one of the first we first started getting involved with it, and it was at a different time. It was right as the internet was changing things about tax sale investing, and we basically were self-taught in doing it. Was the short end of the story there. There was a lot more to it than that, but we were self-taught with it, and ended up creating training. Eventually, we ended up providing to seminar companies, but now we're kind of the anti-seminar company, in a way, I guess you could say. At least that's sort of how we feel about it, and that's because we talk to people every day. We know how much money people have spent with seminars, and we know how it works inside and out. And it's just been a belief of ours that we could offer so much more for so much less, that it didn't have to cost a lot, that we wanted people to be able to make money rather than spending it all on their training, or the idea of being able to make money.
Yeah. For the last decade or so, what me and Shay did is we essentially provided tax sale education programs and books and things like that to a lot of the largest real estate training companies in the country. So we worked with big names that many of you people would recognize, and what we really did we were the behind-the-scenes guys. We were their tax lien and deed guys, and we created their programs and private labeled our programs for these different companies, and then also taught their students. And so we did that for about a decade, and so we taught, over the last decade, 15, 20 years or so, we've taught over 60,000 different investors from the United States and abroad as well, the strategies of tax lien and deed investing. So essentially, what we decided to do was just to really bring this training, or kind of go directly to the public, and just kind of discontinue working with the seminar companies and just work directly with the investors and the students that we've done. We've helped hundreds and hundreds of students and have different stacks of different success stories, but we're always looking to create new success stories. In fact, every week we're creating new success stories on deals we're working with new students.
Yeah, and by the way, the other picture, Mark Blair, he is the portfolio manager that we work with on secondary liens, which is something that we'll be able to get into more in a little bit as we dive into tax sales. But yeah, I think Steve explained it pretty well. Yeah, we've been teaching people for a long time. We've been involved with tax sales for a long time, and we still enjoy teaching it. We love and we think that we have the best systems for doing so. We think that we have the best ways, the simplest and easiest ways to learn how tax sale investing works, because it's a somewhat complex topic to approach if you don't have some basic fundamental understanding of things.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the great thing about tax liens or any type of tax sale investment, even as we get into deeds, is that once you understand the strategies, once you understand what you need to do, the steps you need to go through to make a successful investment, this is something that you can repeat the process over and over again, and it really becomes a way that we can take our own finances, our own retirement accounts, whatever it is you're looking to do, in your own hand, to be able to go out there and start building a residual income, lump sums of incomes, different types of investments, depending on your investment strategy.
Yeah. I think the reality is you don't need to turn your money over to somebody else to make money. In fact, the best way to make money is to leave it in your own hands, which are always going to be the best. And you can use tax liens and tax deeds to make money the way the very few investments can. And they provide incredible levels of security and profit. If we were to just give a couple of statements about tax liens and deeds, tax liens are the easiest and safest way to earn 10% plus. That is just a fact. That is exactly how they work. When it comes to tax liens, I guess I'm past the point of whether or not we know they work, and that's essentially what you can earn on a minimum. 10% is easy to do with tax liens, and when you earn that, you're doing so with your investment secured by real estate. It's incredibly secure. So, that is, and if you think about it, I don't know how many different ways you know of to make 10% plus a year, but if they are safe, then you should invest in them, because I'm not aware of any other way that people can consistently make 10% plus safely, through interest rate returns. And you can actually earn quite a bit more than that if you throw a little bit of property acquisition into the mix there.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about double-digit returns here. So when we're talking about tax liens, we're talking about a double-digit return that's secured by real estate. And so, some people don't understand how that happens, and that's kind of what we're going to explain tonight.
Yeah. Another statement, tax deeds, the cheapest way to buy real estate, period. There is no cheaper way to buy real estate. We can guarantee that. In the beginning, getting involved with tax sales, and before I think before I really fully grasped, what they were, I didn't realize just how special they really are. But when you start to look at different types of real estate investing, you realize that the tax sale investing has all of the best parts of different types of creative real estate. They are the absolute cheapest way to buy property, though. There's not an easier way to buy property, and we can guarantee that.
Yeah, I mean, when we're looking at property here, we're targeting on properties that we can pick up between, 10 to 50 cents on the dollar. So when you're talking about acquiring real estate for 10 to 50 cents on the dollar, you're talking about the opportunity and the ability to make profit. Picking up one of those properties and renting it out and having an immediate residual income, or flipping the property for a lump sum, and taking that money and reinvesting. Really that gives us the flexibility with tax liens and tax deeds to either acquire property immediately or earn interest rate returns with the option or the ability to acquire property.
Yeah. I think really the way that you can earn returns on it is it's pretty incredible compared to any other investment. And the more you learn about it, the better you see that the opportunities are. And what we want to be able to show you tonight is why that's the case. We already know that this is the cheapest way to buy real estate, period. In fact, I think this is probably one of the best real estate opportunities to come around in a long time. And what I'm talking about there is tax sale investing in general right now, and what's happening with it. I think it is one of those things where it is getting easier and easier, and it's easy to make money now, and they're only making it easier now, to buy things. Everything about the system is becoming simpler, and so it's a great time to get involved. But if you want to have success with tax sales, you need to have a good fundamental understanding of terms. You need to understand how different things work. And one of those things that's important to understand is the county government systems, local government versus national government. You need to understand state laws versus federal laws. Just understanding a couple of differences, a couple of things here will make everything else make sense. One of the things we want to talk about is property tax basics, which we want to basically explain where property taxes come from, because to understand that is also to understand why different states do things the way they do. And it also explains why tax liens have always been so difficult for people to understand, why this is not something that was so popular, that everybody was doing, besides the banks and select people in communities. So the reason for that is it's in state laws that you'll find the power is given to local governments to uh, tax people and their personal income and property. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's written into the laws both nationally and on a statewide level. So every state has their own set of laws that give the local governments the power to do that and give the government the power to collect those taxes. Now, the same laws that determine and give the government the power also determine what enforcement measures can be taken. Okay, so we're talking about things from a state-to-state basis. And what that means is that you can have two states right next to each other that can have very different ways of dealing with delinquent property taxes. And that's part of the reason why there was always so much confusion about tax sales, is because you essentially have 50 different ways of doing things, and they're all slightly different. Okay. What we wanted to do was to try to simplify things so you would understand them better. Okay. And so that was part of the reason why we came up with more of a simplified system here to explain things and how they work. So let's talk for a second about local governments. If you want, Steve, go ahead and if you want, you can explain local governments to them and how that works.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, essentially, when we're talking about local governments, we're particularly talking, usually it's going to be on a county government level where we're talking about property taxes. And the reason is most people will pay their property taxes to the county government. Now there's a couple of places like New Jersey where they pay it to maybe a city or a township, and there is exceptions, but 90%, 99% of most places in the United States are going to pay property owners to the county. Now, what the county does is the county provides all of the local services. So, in fact, really, as you start going through them, these are things that some of us take for granted or don't think about. Things like schools, the fire, the police, all of the road work, county services, snow plows, all of those different things that could be used within a particular county are usually going to be paid for majority by the county government. So it's really the property taxes that go to pay for all of these services that we use throughout the county. So you can see that if suddenly the county didn't have the money they needed to be able to pay these services, how this could cause a problem for not only the county, but also in turn could hurt these local services. It could hurt teachers and police departments and firefighters and things like that, because if the county doesn't have the money, then they don't have the money to pay all of these different services and the employees in the county, employees that work within that particular area.
Yeah. In fact, it can cause major problems, I think, when they don't have the property taxes paid. If they're short on money, in other words, if they collect less than what they're anticipating or what they intend to collect, then they have to borrow that because they have regular outgoing expenditures. And when they have to borrow that money, they're paying a lot to do that, and it ends up causing property taxes to go up dramatically. And so they have to have some enforcement measure in place. And I think that the reality of it is, if we didn't have enforcement measures in place, people wouldn't pay their property taxes, because ultimately we do it because there are enforcement measures that are in place. That's kind of what it being a law is all about, is it means that they're able to tell you to do it, and there are enforcement measures in place that basically don't allow you to resist. So another thing that we need to understand here is how the county comes up with what a property owner owes in delinquent taxes. Now, this is important because as you're looking through different tax sale lists, you're going to be looking at we'll talk about that in just a second here, I guess, before I go too deep into it. Property tax bills are fairly simple, okay? They're going to go off your property's assessed value, so the county has somebody that's going to tell you what your property's estimated value is, okay? A county assessed value. And they do that so that everybody's taxed fairly. The other number that matters is the property tax rate for that year in the county. So if you've ever owned real estate, this is basic stuff for you. You know how this works. Your property tax rate Um, we were talking to somebody that lived up in New Jersey, and they said their property tax rate was crazy. How much did they say it was, Steve? Like 3.9% or something crazy.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, it was.
incredibly high.
Yeah, it was way higher than any property tax rate that I've ever, that I'd heard yet. But I guess, different places have different costs of living. But yeah, if you have a property tax rate over 4%, let us know. I'd be interested. I'd just be interested to track, what people are paying here nationally. But yeah, the property tax rate is based on what the county needs to collect. So they know what the overall value of all of the real estate is in the county. So once they know how much money they need to collect, they come up with their property tax rate. So that property tax rate is dependent upon what they believe they're going to collect, and that's how you come up with that bill amount. The reason why this is important, though, is because it shows you that your property tax bill, or the amount that you owe in taxes every year, in a way, is a reflection of what your property's value, what your property's overall value is. Now that's important because it's a shortcut for looking at things. It enables you to look at properties based on value and get some kind of an idea of what the value is on the property without actually looking up information on it or being able to spot it. So yeah, essentially we're talking about enforcement systems that are in place and how what kind of what kind of authority the laws give the government when it comes to enforcing this. And when Steve and I created this program, we broke it up into what we could see were three different distinct systems. And those are tax liens, tax deeds, and redemption deeds. What we mean by that is that every state in the country uses at least one of these, okay? And most states use just one system. So they're either a tax lien state or a tax deed state or a redemption deed state. But what we're finding more and more is that we're seeing more states, I guess, they're adding additional types of sales and things. We're seeing states be a little bit more flexible. It's actually been kind of interesting. We've seen we've seen governments, county governments become better, I think, at managing counties and at running their tax sales. But
Yeah,
first,
well, I,
yeah,
they've become, more flexible, but they've also become more creative, because they need to sell some of these properties to get current properties on their owners, and they're paying the delinquent taxes. And so a lot of these counties have been more motivated or more creative to find ways to be able to sell these tax lien certificates and essentially make them available, or tax deed properties, to investors so that they can put new property owners in those properties.
oh yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we are really at an interesting point in time right now because the internet has changed so many different aspects of our lives that it's almost changed things faster than ideas keep up with. And real estate investing is one of those things that has been dramatically changed by the internet. In fact, it's been changed in so many ways, by the internet, and tax sale investing is just further down the line as far as being incredibly affected. But the ability to perform online record search, the ability to participate in online auctions, the research you can do, just something as simple as Google Earth, years ago, it was crazy, just a crazy idea to us how easy it would have made certain things. So it is just getting it's getting easier to do with a lot of these modern tools, and counties are figuring out that it's easier for them to do these things. And if they, with a little bit of effort, they can make a lot of money. They can sell a lot of their inventory. They can get their whole purpose is to keep that tax revenue coming in. That's what the county needs. That's what they want to do. And so we're just seeing that counties are taking advantage of the opportunities they see in front of them. So when we're talking about tax lien states and the county places lien against the property, what exactly is that lien? Um, a lien is a type of legal claim that can be placed against real estate. And basically, it's placed against real estate because of a debt that's owed, like a delinquent tax bill. The purpose of the lien, though, and the power of the lien is that it prevents the transfer of ownership. So the owner can't sell the property until they take care of this delinquent amount, which is typically the amount that the lien is for. So Each lien has a redemption period with it as well, which means that the lien can eventually be used to foreclose on the property if the amount's not eventually paid. So the liens have an incredible amount of power. But ultimately, the purpose I think in the county creating them is so that they'll have something to sell. So if you want, Steve, let's talk to them a little bit about essentially what happens here when somebody shows up at a tax sale, or I guess when it. Let me just move on here. Let's talk for a second here about what happens, when somebody shows up for the tax sale and to invest, and what they can expect and why they would show up there to invest.
Okay, so you're talking about a live auction or just
Yeah,
an online auction?
just in general,
Okay.
with tax
Well,
sales.
when you attend an auction or even participate in an online auction, it's very similar to any other type of auction that you participated in. So if anyone's been on eBay or did any type of auctions, then you at least have some type of idea of how to participate in a tax sale. In fact, if you can compete in an eBay auction, you can compete in a tax lien or tax deed online auction. It's very similar. You're gonna go through the kind of the same process. It's just really evaluating those individual properties. And so, when you attend that tax sale, there's going to be a lot of different opportunities, but essentially they are going to be offering a batch, or they're going to be offering the properties, the tax and certificates that are essentially available, for that particular tax sale.
Yeah, so you're basically buying out the liens that have been placed against all the properties that have delinquent taxes. Um, and when you pay the county for that lien, the amount of the lien will be the amount that's owed in taxes. It basically gives the county the cash that they need immediately to operate. And so it's a good system for them, but that's their primary purpose in creating the lien. However, for investors, they buy liens for the high interest rate returns generally, because the system is set up like this because I think that most people would agree that just because you're late on your property taxes doesn't mean that you're going to never pay your property taxes. It's just like anything else that you might be late with and pay late. I think people pay a lot of bills late all the time, and taxes are no different. Um, but the idea is this is a solution that allows the county to collect the money now and also lets the owner of the property not lose the property for a while. Okay, so it's a system that I think does the best for both individuals, and it creates this opportunity for an investor, and that is when they sell that lien, it's set to pay out an interest rate return annually. That rate can range from 10 to 24%, 26%, depending on where you are looking at. So it pays a good annual interest rate return, and that means, by the way, a rate that accrues monthly. So 18% annually would be 1.5% per month is what it's accruing at, and it has that redemption period, which is a fail-safe. It's basically a last resort for the investor, but it's also what gives them all the security on their investment.
Yeah, I mean, when we're looking at taxing certificates, we're essentially paying off that property owner's delinquent taxes. And what that tax lien does is it guarantees us that interest rate return. So when we're looking at, purchasing a tax lien certificate, you could purchase $1,000 tax lien certificate this evening that could be against a property that's worth $50,000 or $100,000. So, that property is acting as collateral for your loan, for your investment. But that lien also there's two possible outcomes. There's two things that can happen when you purchase a tax lien certificate.
Yeah, let's see here. The first one is the most obvious one, and the one that happens almost all of the time, and that is redemption. At some point, the property owner is going to pay off the taxes. Okay, and when they do that, the lien is removed from the property, and a check is mailed out to the investor for their initial investment plus the interest rate that they accrued up to that point. Okay, so Again, that's what happens the vast majority of the time. In fact, it's pretty rare for people to lose their property because of delinquent property taxes, but that can happen if it doesn't redeem within that redemption period. So if it's a 2-year redemption period, you wait out that time period, and if it doesn't occur, then you can initiate that foreclosure process uh, with the power of the lien. And oftentimes when you start that process of foreclosing, that's when it gets serious for people, and that's when they suddenly will step up and pay off the amount oftentimes. So just because it goes past the redemption period also doesn't mean that it's not going to redeem. They oftentimes do redeem, but if it doesn't, and that after that foreclosure notice has gone out, the property will be foreclosed on. And the essentially you're either going to get your interest rate return, your money back plus your interest rate return, or you're going to have the chance to acquire the property. It'll be one or the other.
Yeah, I mean that's the reason tax lien investing, I think you can make a case that tax lien investing is the best investment ever. Because, not only are you guaranteed a high interest rate return, but you have the chance to acquire the property. So literally is our investment not only backed up by state law, it's backed up by 50 or 100 years worth of history, but it's also backed up by the property itself. So only two things can happen. Either you're going to get your money back or you're going to foreclose on and take the property. So as long as we're purchasing tax lien certificates on good, valuable property, then our investment is always going to be a safe, good investment. Here are two different examples of some tax lien certificates that were purchased in Colorado and went through the foreclosure process. So these were tax liens that were purchased. They waited that redemption period. So every tax lien certificate is going to have a time frame where that property owner can pay back the tax lien, pay back the loan, the debt. So that can range from 1 year to 3 years. There can go farther than that in a few states, but usually it's between about 1 to 3 years. And so once that tax lien certificate owner, that tax lien investor purchases that tax lien at the auction, then that redemption period is going to start. And so once that redemption period is end, these are two properties that were picked up through tax lien certificates. And so we can see this, this first property has an assessed value of 174, has a Zillow value of about 259, and it was picked up for $7,774 worth in delinquent taxes. So what that probably is a couple of years worth of delinquent taxes. So it's more than one tax lien. Somebody purchased one tax lien and then they were delinquent on the next year. And so essentially this tax lien holder was able to acquire this property for essentially $7,774. We can see the property down below is even, was purchased for $16,000 and has a Zillow value of market value of about 338. And so these are, two examples of properties that were able to be acquired through purchasing a tax lien certificate. Now, all of the properties, that didn't get to this point, the lien holders made back their interest and their money. So that was still a great investment. These are just two examples of tax liens that went all the way through the foreclosure process, where you can see that these people, both of these investors, picked up these properties literally for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find better deals than this. And yeah, the other side of that is, like Steve said, the rest of the investors earned back their initial investment, plus they earned a good high interest rate return. It was a really safe investment. That's what's crazy about liens, is you can oftentimes have what is such a small amount compared to the property value, uh, but that lien, even though it is a small amount, has a tremendous amount of power. They have crazy power, where a small lien can be used to foreclose on a nice, valuable property. But that's because liens are first position, especially these types of liens. They are a first position lien, meaning they take priority or precedence over anything, including even a mortgage. So if there was a mortgage on one of these properties, let's say, when the county began to foreclose on the property, one of the first things that happens is foreclosure notices go out to all of the owners of the property. That would include mortgage companies, if there are any. And what would generally happen if your mortgage company got a notice in the mail saying that your house is about to be foreclosed on because of delinquent property taxes, they'd probably step in and do something, because they need to protect their interest in that property, they have borrowed, they're the lender in the situation, but they've have that property as security or as collateral there for the loan. And so that's really what's securing it and making it a safe investment for them. So they need to protect their side of it. They'll oftentimes pay it off. But if they didn't, then that's the power of that lien, is it would wipe out, it would basically, it would the loan itself would no longer be attached to the property. It would still exist between the borrower and the lender, but they would no longer have that property as collateral because they would have lost it to foreclosure if that were the case. But that's why it doesn't normally happen with properties that have a mortgage or something like that. In fact, the majority of the time, like I said, they usually redeem. But these are some awesome examples here.
Yeah, and so essentially when we're looking at tax lien certificates, it's really one of the safest investments because 95% of the time you're going to make back your money in your interest rate return. So usually only about 5% of tax liens end up going all the way to through foreclosure where you actually acquire the property. So most of the time you're just going to get back a check in the mail, and then you just continue reinvesting that into tax lien certificates so that you're always making a high interest rate return. But then, of course, if you have one of these properties that gets to the point of foreclosure, then you can go ahead and foreclose on the property and acquire a property really for just anywhere between 3 to 15 or 20% of its value, and really pick up an incredible deal.
Yeah, there really is. There's no cheaper way to get into real estate than through tax sales. And what's interesting is that those were just the tax liens that we're talking about. That's when people are generally investing to earn high interest rate returns, and that's just the chance they had to acquire property. If you're interested in property, all of the red states you see here utilize a tax deed system, which is a little bit different, but if you're into property, then that's essentially what you're looking at.
Yeah, and one thing that's made so much of a difference from when me and Shade first got started. We first got started really in the late 90s, early 2000s, starting researching tax sales, and the process was completely different. Now with the internet, you don't necessarily have to live in the state that you'd like to invest. In fact, most of our investors are investing outside of their own state. I would say probably 80–90% of the investors that we work with are investing outside of their own state that they live in. And what's made that possible is the internet. Now with the internet, you have the ability to do all of the research that used to take years.
Yeah, it was far more difficult, even 15 years ago, to invest outside of your own area than it is today. That is something that is just getting easier and easier. But these tax deed states, when we're looking at all of those red states, tax deed states, the system is slightly different. What the state laws do is they give the county the power to foreclose on properties that are delinquent with property taxes once they get past a certain redemption period. So in the state laws for tax deed states, they basically set what the redemption period is going to be, and then what the procedures will be to foreclose on those properties and how they go about doing that. So the counties in these states, some of them create kind of a lien that they keep on record for themselves. Some of them don't. But the main point is they don't really hold sales unless they are tax deed sales. And what this means is that once they have the properties that have gone through the foreclosure process, they will then offer them for sale for the opening bid. And the opening bid amount is what's owed in taxes, penalties, and fees. So as long as it gets a minimum bid, they're getting their money out of it. They mostly just want to get, sell it off to a new property owner so that they can have somebody that will start collecting the property taxes. I mean, that will start paying property taxes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really what a tax deed is just, instead of like a tax lien state where they create these liens, the county just sits back. And so they'll sit back for 2 to 4 years, 5 years, and then the county just forecloses on the property and offers it up at auction. So the opening bid's going to start at, just like Shade said, just the delinquent taxes, so just the back taxes. So if we're looking at a property that was delinquent for 3 or 4 years, that may be, let's say it was $1,000 a year in property taxes, it may be 3 or 4 or 5 grand where that opening bid will start. That means that you could acquire the property for that opening bid amount depending on how the auction goes. And so that's the advantage of tax deeds is you're getting the chance to bid on these properties at really a low bid amount, a low starting bid. And so what that enables us to do is to usually be able to have the ability to create larger profits because we're picking up a property for 10 to 50% on the dollar versus buying a property for 90 or a dollar, a dollar on the dollar.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and I think that tax deeds are real foreclosures versus bank foreclosures, which in a way are not really real foreclosures. When we think about foreclosures, we think about the idea, the bank foreclosure. I think that's what most people think about. But the reality of it is, the bank foreclosure is just the bank's own personal kind of foreclosure. It's like a company foreclosure, okay? And lenders are able to do that because when you sign your mortgage contract, you basically sign away your rights to a true foreclosure. Okay, that's because the lender wants to be able to do it quickly. Okay, so that's why they have you sign that right away. These properties are properties that have actually been through a real foreclosure through the courts. Okay, so these properties have actually gone through a process that wipes out and extinguishes anything that's attached to them so that they can be sold and transferred over to a new owner. Okay, that's a real benefit for you as an investor because it means that these are not going to have anything attached to them like they would if you were to buy them, like let's say at a bank foreclosure. That would be before any actual kind of foreclosure had ever taken place. So you would still be liable for whatever was attached to the property. In this case, you wouldn't be because of the power of that foreclosure. So these are like real foreclosures compared to something like bank foreclosures. The other side of it is that you can get these types of properties cheaper than you would ever be able to get them from a bank foreclosure. And the reason why is because when the bank is selling a property at one of their foreclosure sales, they may offer a discount on it, but it's still money out of their pocket if they sell it for less. So they're going to sell it for as much as they can. When a county sells a property, the opening bid amount is what's owed in delinquent taxes and fees. Beyond that, they don't care what it sells for. Okay, so it's the only type of sale you'll find where the owner of the property at the time has no personal interest in what it sells for. As long as they get that opening bid amount, they don't care what it sells for, and that's why you'll find better deals at tax sales than I guess with any other type of investing. And it doesn't even have to be at the sale either. There are other ways that you can buy, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But I think these are a couple of examples, Steve. If you want to tell them about some of these examples.
Yeah, in fact, I just noticed as you pulled this up, that Florida tax deed on the right wasn't acquired for $10,000. It was actually acquired for just over $3,000. I was looking for a property that was a single-family home that was picked up for $3,000 at a tax deed sale in the last couple of months, and this is one of the properties that I found. So the winning bid I have listed there, I sent it to you wrong, but that property there was picked up in the last couple of months through a tax deed auction in Florida. For about $3,000, and the price is right. It has a value of about $52,000. So, when you're looking at that type of acquiring a property for $3,500, $3,000, that has a property value of 50, you're looking at an overall good investment. This property here on the left was just a Washington property in the state of Washington at a tax deed sale that just took place a week or two ago. And so what this is it's a almost about a half-acre building lot in a really nice area of Washington State. It has a market value. This is a low market value because I just kind of really almost looked at the assessed value. I didn't do a comparable on it. From what I could see, it had a market value of quite a bit higher, of about 60,000, and it was picked up for just over $3,000 at the tax sale. And the property up in the left-hand corner is one that's coming up to auction next month. Has an opening bid of 6,000 and sells for 122. Now, every auction is going to be a little bit different, and every property is going to be a little bit different. Sometimes you'll have that one property where two investors both want to have it, and they'll pay more than they should. But for us as tax sale investors, when we're bidding on properties, we're generally trying to get these properties for 10 to 50 cents on the dollar. Usually, if the property goes above that, then we're willing to let it go because there's so many different opportunities taking place.
Now, just some of the numbers here have have got to have some people amazed. I mean, if you're talking about legitimately buying homes for like $6,000, okay, and it having a market value of 122,000, I also want everybody to think about something, and that is rent. Rent prices are something that have gone up everywhere, and they have gone up in some areas much faster than real estate prices have gone up. Or when real estate prices take a plunge, rent prices still stay high. And so rent prices are something that are quite high, and it's an easy way to bring in residual income on a property. Now, most of the time when people think about long-term real estate, the problem they have with it is they don't want to be a landlord or something like that. But when you buy a property for $6,000 that is close to being rentable like this, just think about that. That property probably rents out. I don't know if we were to guess here. It probably said on Zillow, but I would guess that it would rent out for at least $1,000 a month, probably $900 to $1,000 a month.
Yeah, well, this is in California, so it was more like 1,500 or so.
Yeah. Okay. So $6,000 is what is paid for, and it has the capacity to rent out for more. I mean, that's amazing if you think about it. There's an investment that could potentially pay itself off in less than 6 months with just the rent. Okay, and then from there, yeah, you own the property.
Yeah, yeah, in the property on the right-hand corner, we have a lot of investors that look at Florida and focus on Florida because the rental market is such a good market. This property here on the right was purchased for just 3 grand. And has a value of 5,200, but the rental is probably anywhere between 800 to $1,000 a month. So if you were to purchase this property for 3 grand, essentially put a renter in it paying 800 or $1,000 a month, within a matter of 3 or 4 months, 6 months tops, this property is paid itself off, and essentially you have a cash flowing property that's giving you 800 or $1,000 a month.
Yeah, I think that it's absolutely insane. When you start to look at it. I mean, here are a couple of other examples here of those two in Florida.
Yeah, just similar. These are a couple other properties in Florida, purchased for $10,000 and $20,000. Have a market about 50 and 85 respectively. And so, in each one of these properties, you could have a different strategy. You could turn around and flip it. You could turn around and sell it for top dollar, high profit, or you could turn it into a rental or a seller finance type situation where you are acting like the bank. A lot of times that's what a lot of these investors do with these tax deed properties is essentially seller finance them to somebody who essentially will go in there and wants to acquire the property, wants to buy the property, wants to sell or finance it. And that allows us to be able to get a residual income off that property, but also that property owner can take care of any maintenance that's required. If not, then you can just rent that property out and be like Shay talked about, you don't have to worry about paying that mortgage payment. It's easily affordable to be able to have a property management company handle your different properties in this area for you, and just take a bit of that rent coming in, so that you don't even have to worry about it.
How many livable single-family homes do you think we've seen sell at auction for less than $20,000? It's probably in the
Probably thousands over
yeah,
the years.
probably yeah. Over the years, it's probably in the thousands. I mean, you can find these types of opportunities out there, and that's only if you want to buy let's say like something like single family homes. There are all different types of real estate that you can buy. There's great opportunities with land. If you're into commercial property, you can find commercial property in a lot of these sales. There is something to suit just about every specific niche that you're looking for because everybody pays property taxes. Nobody gets away with it. Nobody can get away from it either. So you're going to find every type of real estate, involved with the tax sale process.
Yeah, I mean, land, you bring up land, and that's a great point. I mean, if you really want as little hassle as possible, you want to just turn around and flip the property, sell it for a profit, these tax deed land lots and large tracts of land is a great way to do it because it's so easy to sell online. You don't have to go in and make sure that the sheetrock is okay and the pipes work and the plumbing and the electricity and all that kind of stuff. You just turn around and you're just selling a chunk of land. It's just an investment that you bought it for this price and you're selling it for this price and you're essentially making the profit. You're making the in between.
Yeah, and the land that you're looking at is so cheap, comparatively, to other real estate that you're looking at buying. Again, it's the cheapest way to buy real estate. And what's crazy about this is that you can start out at almost any money level that you want. It doesn't just cater to, oh, if you've got more than $10,000. If you don't have a lot of money to invest in, then there are lots of investments that start as low as a few $100s if you wanted. You can work your way up. You don't have to spend a ton. I mean, and it's better to get started and start buying something now so that you understand the process. The first liens that we bought were not huge. They were tiny. Mine was a little $67 lien, but it was invaluable in terms of what it taught me about the process and in what and I guess in some of the faith that it built in the fact that it worked. It was amazing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can go out there and spend a couple of hundred, this evening you could go out there and spend $200 and buy a tax lien certificate that's earning 18% interest rate that's on a property that's worth, 50 times the value of the tax lien. And then with tax deeds, I mean, just this last week we had one of our students that we're working with that picked up a tax deed property. He purchased it for $1 because the county was trying to get rid of these properties, and he purchased a great half-acre building lot for $1, but then he had $35 in fees, so it cost him $36. He acquired a property that he's going to be able to turn around and sell there locally for a couple of grand, but probably has a value of about 10 grand. So when you're looking at these different types of deals, that's what tax sale investing gives you, is it gives you opportunities that you're not going to be able to get anywhere else, at least not that I know of. If there's a better strategy out there, man, we'll tell you about it, but I've never seen one.
No, I don't think you'll find anything, and I think it's really because of that fact that every other type of investment, usually you have somebody that has a personal interest in the property. I really think that that's what it comes down to. And for the county, that's something else that's pretty exciting that we're seeing about counties now is the fact that they are choosing to move past some of their old thinking, and they are looking to create opportunities for investors. They just want to get people that are paying property taxes that own property. Okay, so they are not very good at marketing. That's something you need to realize about counties, is that they have never been good at marketing. Back in the day before the internet came around, their tax sales, they had a terrible time trying to get people out to their tax sales usually because they would advertise it in the newspaper, so they would get locals that might come out to the tax sale. But it wasn't something that they got out-of-state investors for because people weren't going to travel to do it. And so if they didn't get enough investors to their sales, what happened? They had to put everything back on the books. Maybe they'd try to do another sale and hope they could collect more. But over time, they end up with this huge, over time, let's say they've ended up with so many properties they just cannot seem to get delinquent property taxes on. And now it seems like they're cleaning these places up. They're going to help property values increase. They're really forward thinking with what they're doing, and I think it's going to be exciting for the investors that are they're there to participate and to buy these properties from counties. Um, The third system we have listed here are redemption deeds. So we talked about tax liens, we talked about tax deeds. There are some states that use a system that we call redemption deeds. It is a hybrid of both tax liens and tax deeds. They are essentially tax deeds that are sold with a redemption period that is attached to them. Um, they in terms of, in other words, the county will go through the foreclosure process and then will offer the property up for sale at auction. You could buy the property there at auction, but once you buy the property, you wouldn't have the ability to necessarily turn around and sell it until a redemption period expires. So you can't actually transfer ownership until the redemption period on it has passed. Other key points on it, I don't know, what do you think, Steve? Penalty rates?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, essentially what a redemption deed is a tax deed that has a redemption period attached to it. So that's I think sometimes the easiest way to look at it. In most redemption deed states, it's just kind of form of a tax deed. The county will actually issue a deed in your name, but they're not going to, process that deed until after that redemption period has expired. And so in looking at a state like Texas, for example, that's kind of one of the prime redemption deed states. And what makes the redemption deed state nice is that they offer a penalty, like Shade mentioned, versus an interest rate return. So instead, in Georgia or Texas, a place like this, if you invest, let's say you spend $10,000 at the tax sale and the property owner pays off the next day, you're going to get that full 25% return on your money. It's not going to be, like a tax lien certificate that's going to be broken, that percentage rate is going to be broken up over annually. In a redemption deed state, that penalty is given all automatically. So when you go ahead and purchase that, you're going to get a full penalty versus that interest being spread out over a year. In addition with that, some redemption deed states also give you property ownership. So like Texas being that example, like a tax deed, once you acquire that property, you could live in the property, you could rent the property out. You're going to have ownership to that property once that tax sale has taken place. But that property owner has either 6 months, in most cases, if it's unless it's a homestead, then it would be 2 years to pay you off essentially the investment. So when you're acquiring redemption deeds, you've got a lot higher chance of getting the property, and sometimes you'll have property ownership rights. It's just going to depend on the particular state that you're investing into. But
yeah,
that's
I think,
essentially kind of how they work.
yeah, and there are some investors, I think, that like them. Um, I think there are advantages, in some ways. I mean, each one of the investments offer different unique advantages, and so you could make a case for any of them. Really, you could make a case for tax liens as far as being the way to go. You could make a case for tax deeds, or you could make a case for redemption deeds. So what really it kind of comes down to is what you as the investor are after, because uh, some of them may work better for helping you achieve your goals than others. And that kind of leads us into a simplified way here of teaching as well, in that whether you're looking at tax liens or deeds or redemption deeds, essentially there are 4 buying methods, in general, in which you can participate and purchase either liens or deeds. And we've got those listed here. We've got them listed as live auction, online auction, over the counter, and secondary. Okay, so what's interesting is that basically covers all of the different ways that you can essentially buy. I don't think there's any other way that you can participate or buy than through these 4.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing you could possibly do a sealed bid, but in a way that's just a kind of a live auction or an online auction almost, where you're just submitting a sealed bid, and even that's only just a handful. So, 99% of it's either going to be done through those 4 invested methods.
Yeah, now the live auctions, or we're saying live county auctions here, are the first method. Now they're the by far the oldest, most common method. Now, these are how tax sales have been conducted for decades. Okay, for a long time, the counties have conducted these tax sales as auctions. Usually, they're in the uh, well, if they've got a county courthouse, oftentimes it's there. If not, it's going to be in another type of county building. In fact, every state probably still has live sales that are conducted. I don't think anybody's fully converted over to online
No,
auctions yet.
I don't think so either. I mean, really, live auction is a job that Wyatt Earp, back in the Wild West, that was one of his duties, was conducting the county foreclosures for tax sales. And so this is something that's been going on for literally hundreds of years. In fact, in somewhere in one of our storage units, we've got old tax deeds that were purchased, and even tax liens that were from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. We collected some of those from long ago. So this isn't something that's new. This is something that's been around for years, and essentially the way that the county conducts the auction. Now, really what a live auction is you're just attending the auction in person. You're going down to the county courthouse, you're bidding against other bidders, it's live, it's in person, and you're essentially, participating in the sale. In fact, me and Shade always recommend, if there's a live auction in your area and you can attend, go out there and attend it, even if you don't plan on bidding or buying at the auction, just to sit back and watch the auction process.
Yeah, there's so much you can learn by doing that, and it's always worth going. And it is still the most common method of sale for these things. Still is through live auctions. So online auctions are picking up a lot of steam, which are the next system that we're going to talk about. But live auctions are still plentiful, and I think they will be for a while. I mean, eventually we think that things will mostly move over to online eventually, but it will take a while before that happens. And so I think you'll still continue to see live, in-person auctions for a long time.
Yeah, and what makes these online auctions so nice is it just gives us the ability to participate in auctions that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. We could participate in Colorado or Arizona or Florida or New Jersey or Indiana tax lien sales, Nebraska tax lien sales, Maryland tax lien sales, and all kinds of different tax deed sales just from our computer. We're able to bid on these properties, buy these properties, transfer most all the documents are all done online. So it makes it really convenient for us as investors to purchase in different areas outside of our own area where we live.
Yeah, and essentially what's happened is there are different companies, third-party companies, that specialize in online auctions, and they have partnered with many of these counties to begin offering the properties available, online. And so we have some of the auction companies listed here below that have partnered up with the counties. And what tends to happen is sometimes you'll have multiple auction companies working within the same state. Sometimes you'll have an auction company that pretty well has the entire state, or if there are counties, they have all of the states within the county, they have all the counties within the state that are using an online auction. So you'll find a variety, but yeah, those companies include Real Auction, Grant Street Group, SRI Auctions, Bid for Assets, and there are actually a lot of others, and they're growing all of the time because the online auction side of tax sales is constantly growing. In fact, we've watched it grow incredible amounts over the last 15 years. We've watched the number of tax sales, online auctions probably double nearly every year, it seems like. So, there are
And there's
lots and
still
lots of
great
opportunities.
opportunities.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, there's still incredible opportunities. In fact, all of those tax deeds that we looked at underneath the tax deeds earlier, those property examples, every one of those was either acquired or that one that's coming up in an online tax deed sale. So, there's going to be great opportunity as well in different areas where you have the chance to participate in these online auctions. It also gives you the ability to continue investing in that area year after year if the county will continue having sales in that area, which we know they will because every county has to have tax sales.
yeah. We also just want to do a quick check here, make sure, because we had somebody tell us here just a second ago that they couldn't hear or they didn't have audio. We just want to make sure that everybody can hear, that they're not having any kind of a problem. I don't know if it's just a case where just the one person's having a problem, or if it's with everybody. So if you could, if you can hear us okay and there's no problems, let us know if audio seems to be if audio is broadcasting well for you and you can hear us right now. Do us a favor and just go down to the chat section or the question section and let us know. And that way, oh, perfect. Okay, so it sounds like it's working perfect for most everybody for the most part. So we'll keep an eye out, see if we can help her.
Yeah,
Um,
one thing you can do, you can always just try logging out and logging back in. Sometimes that can fix the problem.
oh, good. Okay, awesome. Um, in addition to online auctions, which are a great opportunity, and like Steve said, we still see lots of opportunity there. It's not like it's something where there's too much competition now. It's just not that way. There's also a tremendous opportunity with over-the-counter investing. In fact, in a way, this is kind of like the floodgates opening uh, as far as opportunities in tax sales, and that's because many counties that offer these tax liens, and in some cases tax deeds, if they don't sell these properties at auction, then their options are to either offer them at another sale later down the road, but some counties will actually make them available so that people can purchase them right off of their books for the amount that's owed after the sale. This is known as over-the-counter investing. Sometimes it's called assignment purchasing, or you'll see them referred to as county-held liens, or there's so many different terms for it for over-the-counter. But it essentially means purchasing these liens or possibly deeds after the auction has occurred directly from the county, which gives you a couple of unique benefits. One of which is that because you're purchasing it after the auction, you're not competing with anybody directly. The amount you pay is simply what's owed in delinquent taxes and fees. So that would be the equivalent of the opening bid amount in most cases.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're talking about over the counters. We're essentially buying these tax liens or these tax deeds directly from the county. So when we're looking at tax deeds, instead of bidding up that price, we can just essentially pay the amount of the delinquent tax. And when we're looking at tax liens, this is where we can really get the highest interest rate returns in a lot of times because we're not competing against other bidders bidding down that interest rate return like you would in an auction. And there's a lot of reasons why these over-the-counters are going to be available too. It's not because they're necessarily junk properties. Let's say that the county has $10 million worth of tax liens to sell, one of these big counties, and they only sell $5 million. That means that there's additional $5 million worth of tax liens that are still available.
Yeah, we actually have a really good question here, and the question is, as my question is, the online auction is very competitive. So if we do not have a lot of money to invest, is it hard for me to compete with the big? I guess what they're wondering is it hard for me to compete with the big investor, isn't it? And so what I think I would say to that is if you if you have less money that you're working with, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be trying to go for the same properties, but what it may mean is that maybe the auction is not the best way to go about buying if you've got a pretty limited amount of capital. And what I mean by that is there are lots and lots of opportunities that get passed up in tax sales for lower dollar amounts. In fact, a lot of the low dollar amount opportunities get passed up because they are cheaper and because there's more of it. There are some great opportunities out there. If you've got less capital, I think that really the best thing you can do is change your strategy a little bit so that you're looking for a different type of investment. So in other words, rather than trying to compete with somebody for the home that they can always outbid you on, really your idea is you want to pick up something for as close to opening bid amount as possible. So if somebody wants that property so much that they're always going to take it away, then that's okay. Sometimes we'll bid on 4 or 5 different things in an auction and have them all, lose them all. Or sometimes you'll win one. Either way, the idea is to buy it well. So when you do buy, make sure that it is at the price that's reasonable, that you're doing well with it, because this is tax sale investing, and there's no reason to pay too much. There's no reason to pay what sometimes we'll see different people pay for things, on online, uh, when there's so many other good opportunities around you. So if you were looking to engage in tax sales, I mean, I guess okay, if I was in the exact same position, what would I be after? And I think the best thing that you could go after would be some of these opportunities in inexpensive tax deeds, or tax deeds that cost less. Good opportunities to go out there and to find land that you can buy, and that you can turn around and sell. There's great opportunities in that wouldn't require the same type of work that other investing might. Um, yeah, I guess there's more than one way to skin a cat. I guess they'd say there's more than one way to get to your objective with this, I think, and it may
Yeah,
not
and
be
if
through an auction.
yeah, and if it was just through, depending on if your investment strategy is liens or deeds, you can find inexpensive tax liens and inexpensive tax deeds. We could probably go on the internet right now and go to one of these counties and find some great, over the counters. And really, one thing, it kind of to piggyback what Shade said, that I'd recommend if somebody is have limited, capital to get started with, then you're just going to have to do a little bit more research. You're gonna find that diamond in the rough. And a lot of times you can find kind of a county honey hole where you can keep going back to this county and acquiring properties from this county. We have some students that will find a particular county that's successful and they're able to pick up property there through some over-the-counter list, and they'll just continue going back to that county and repurchasing properties and selling them for a profit there. So there's always, just like Shade said, there's a lot of different strategies that you can utilize to accomplish whatever your end goal is.
Another good follow-up question to the last one was, is it true that over-the-counter tax liens or deeds are not good ones? So it is kind of like the leftover, I think. So it's left for over-the-counter. In other words, are they the ones like the leftovers, or were they not good? Were they the ones that were kind of that were tossed aside? And let me give you an idea of different reasons that a property may end up over the counter, because you might be surprised. Now, could it be that a property gets overlooked, and that it's not good, and it goes into the over the counter pile? It goes back on the books. Yeah, sure, it's possible. You're going to find properties like that. But at the same time, though, some counties sell thousands, sometimes many thousands of liens all at once, and they may not have enough investors even there to buy them all. Um, Investors like to focus on certain types of properties and ignore lots of other types of properties. So it oftentimes depends on what types of properties you're looking at. But I would say no, there's definitely lots of good opportunities everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the great strategies about over the counter, is that there is going to be good opportunities. Let's say that you're looking at a tax sale list, and let's say there's 90% of them is junk. So there is going to be those properties that were left there for a reason. But there's also going to be properties that are good properties that, just like Shade said, they didn't have enough money at the auction. We've seen auctions where the bidding was very competitive for the first half of the auction, and all the properties that were purchased at the last half of the auction went for minimum bids, and lots of them didn't even get purchased because the investors had already spent their money. So there's a lot of different reasons why there could be over the counters, but that doesn't mean that they're all going to be bad. In fact, many times you're going to find some very incredible properties, some of the best properties on over the counter. We could show you example after example of every kind of tax lien and tax deed that's available through over the counter. We've been looking this week at over the counter single family homes, commercial lots, building lots, commercial properties. So really it's just a matter of finding the right property. So you may dig through a little bit of junk to find that good one, but that's really what being an investor is finding those ones that are going to be a good investment, and purchasing those ones.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, There are great opportunities in over-the-counter investing. It all depends on where you're looking and like I said, what you're looking for. But we find this stuff all the time. Great opportunities, just about everywhere that we look. So definitely yes on that. And another question was, do all counties offer over-the-counter? And the answer to that is no. They don't all offer over-the-counter. Some counties are they are not able to do it because of state law. In other words, state law may prevent them from turning around and selling something like tax deed over the counter in some cases. In some cases, they just don't do it. A lot of counties may hold subsequent sales. They'll just hold many subsequent sales for properties that don't sell at auction. It's also a matter, I think, of whether or not you're talking about liens or deeds, because they tend to get handled a little bit differently. I don't know. What's your take on that, Steve?
I would probably say about maybe 50 or 60% of counties will have over the counter. So maybe it's higher than that, but there's going to be some counties that don't. There's going to be some counties that sell a lot of their liens or deeds at auction, and there'll be some counties that don't have very many lists. But then there'll also be other counties that have thousands of properties available. And so it's just really going to depend on the individual county, but we have, all of the over-the-counter list on our website for all of the different areas that will offer those over-the-counters.
Yeah. You know, the last buying method that we mentioned before was secondary, and some of you may know what that is. Some of you may not. It is a buying method that hasn't, well, it's been around for a while, but it hasn't necessarily been available to the average investor until more recently. What we're talking about here are secondary tax liens. The question is, what if you could get all of the benefits of tax lien investing without all of the time and work, to seek them out and find them and to go through the process of, buying them? What if you could avoid all of that and still earn money with tax liens and still have their same, degree of security and still be able to earn, returns of 10+%? And that's kind of what we're talking about with secondary tax liens. If you want, Steve, you can go ahead and tell them about secondary tax liens. I think you can probably explain it better than me.
Oh yeah, no problem. I mean, essentially, what secondary or these bank-owned tax liens are is large banks, Wells Fargo, others have been investing in tax liens for since we first got started, really for decades. And so what these big investors will do, and you used to see this a lot of times at the live auctions, is they would come in with 50 different employees there to bid at all the tax liens at the auction. And so they would come in and they would spend $10 million or $5 million even in a particular sale. $3 or $4 or $5 million just in one of these big, huge Florida sales or an Arizona sale or something like that, one of these tax lien sales, and they'd buy huge batches of tax lien certificates. In fact, there's some places in the country that will only sell their tax liens to one of these large private, one of these large private investors, one of these hedge funds or banks. And so what has happened is these tax liens, these banks, they purchase these large portfolios of tax liens, but they don't necessarily, what they're after is the interest. They aren't necessarily after the property. And so what they'll do is they'll hold on to these tax liens until they get at the end of the redemption period. So usually about 90% of the tax liens that these banks will buy will go ahead and be redeemed, meaning that the bank's going to get back their money and they're going to get back their interest just like you and me would if we invested in that tax lien. But this 10%, this remaining group of tax liens that didn't sell, all of these tax liens are essentially foreclosure ready. And so what we're able to do is we're able to go in there and purchase these secondary liens. So these are tax liens that have already been purchased from the county. Really what a secondary lien is or buying a secondary investment is just buying a tax lien or deed that wasn't purchased through the county. So you're buying this lien or deed either through another investor or through a company, or in our case, we're buying these from these large banks and institutions.
Also, just to cover a couple of different things here, and to help make sense of it. First off, one of the questions we had, I think, was related to when we were talking about tax deeds and the properties. And the question was, will visiting the actual property be considered as one of the important parts of due diligence? And the answer to that actually depends on the type of investment that you're going after. For instance, if you're buying something like, let's say, a home, okay, and you're spending a lot, then you definitely want to have somebody lay eyes on the property so that you can get some idea of what the condition on the property is. But let's say that you're just dealing with land. Well, if you're just dealing with land, then the need to see the property in person suddenly becomes less important with some of the tools that we have available today. Just getting a picture of the property in many cases is enough. So as far as actually visiting it, you don't physically have to be there yourself either, because visiting the property doesn't necessarily have to be you, in other words. And part of the reason why this is again, as a matter of expense. I mean, if you wanted, you could travel out to the place and do all your due diligence research, but you don't have to do that anymore. There are cheaper ways that you can do it. So there are ways you could have somebody take some images of the property that they could send over to you so that they're new, so that you still know about what the current condition of the property is. And then most of the other research you're going to do is stuff you can do online. So you don't actually necessarily have to travel out there. But it's always going to be a good idea to have somebody lay eyes on the property if it's something like a structure. But with land, though, it's a little bit different story. With then I think you can get by with less, because usually you're talking about a smaller investment amount, and land, you don't have the same types of concerns that you'll have with other types of properties, something with improvements.
Yeah, I mean, with our students, with our members, that we kind of teach a couple of different strategies. But Shade's exactly right. I mean, when you're looking at a structured property, then it's important to have a current photo of the property to make your evaluation. Somebody view eyes on the property. But just like Shade said, we teach strategies that you don't have to do that yourself. But when it comes to something like a lot or a building lot, really kind of the rule is just depending on how much you're going to spend. It's going to kind of be a personal decision. So, for example, if me and Shade are buying tax deeds for $100 to $500 each that we're turning around and selling online for $3,000 or $4,000 or to property owners in that area, then we're probably not going to go out there and make sure that we have a current view of the property. If it's an average building lot, we kind of know what it is. But if it's a structure or anything like that, that's going to be very, very helpful. In fact, we just kind of thought of or looked at a new strategy this week that it's kind of off the point, but researching having a drone actually go in and look at the property and see if you can get a little bit better idea of the condition. But when we're talking about tax deeds, we really have to do the evaluation on what we see. We're not going to be able to go into these properties or get keys into the properties until after we acquire it. In fact, we're not going to get keys. We're going to have to essentially, most cases, we're going to have a locksmith or somebody like that go open the property for us. But that would kind of be, I guess, the answer to the.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that price dictates everything, when it comes to this. So, that might sound crazy. Let's say buying a home that you can't have the keys with or something, that you have to relock, you have to get the doors, rekeyed. But when you're talking about buying these properties, you're talking about buying them as a wholesaler. I mean, you're basically picking them up for the absolute lowest amount of any investor. There's not an investor that will be closer to the purchase here than you. You're the first one in the line here, so you can decide what you want to do with the property. But at the same time, these are valuable pieces of property, and you simply know the cheapest way to buy them. That's really what this comes down to. When we're talking about secondary tax liens and we're talking about the foreclosure readiness of them, we just wanted everyone to kind of understand here the way that tax liens work in general. When you have a tax lien, the lien becomes more valuable the longer you hold on to it. Okay, so if you bought this lien for $1,000 and you are earning 18% annually on this lien, then the value of the lien is going up every single month as that interest accrues. So every single month, you can add that 1.5%, so that after a year, it has accrued $180 in additional interest. That's the 18% of that $1,000. That is known as the redemptive value of the lien. Okay, so if it's sold, at 1 year, if it hadn't redeemed yet, the redemptive value of the lien would be $1,180 because that's the amount that it will redeem for, because that's the amount that's owed. Okay, and that basically just kind of continues on. If we're looking at tax liens that have a like a 2-year redemption period, then yeah, you're looking at a tax lien that has 2 years worth of interest. Okay, so it means that there is 36% interest. So when this lien redeems, it will redeem for $1,360. Okay, if that makes sense here. So when we're looking at the foreclosure readiness side of it, one of the benefits of looking at these secondary tax liens and them being foreclosure ready is, even when you file for foreclosure, it doesn't necessarily mean that the property is going to end up going to foreclosure. Okay, what we're looking at with these properties gives them a higher chance of going to foreclosure because they're properties that have already passed they're close to or past the set redemption period, so they've already gone longer and are eligible now for that foreclosure process. But again, once you start that process of foreclosing on the properties, that's when many properties end up redeeming. There's also benefits to actually going through the process of initiating foreclosure, which we like to do with like Florida, for instance, because in Florida, the county basically does all the work for you. All you have to do is tell them when to start.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what makes it an advantage of these secondary tax liens is that we're able to go out there and make purchases from the banks, or essentially make bids on behalf of our investors to these banks to purchase to purchase a portfolio of tax lien certificates. So that gives the investor the ability to purchase tax liens. And one of the reasons we particularly look in Florida is because that gives you the ability to essentially have the county do the foreclosure for you. You know, fill out what's called a deed application, do the foreclosure process, and what that does is that goes ahead and puts that tax lien certificate into a foreclosure sale. Now, what that means is that we're going to make back you're going to make back your money, or I'm going to make back my money if I'm investing in this tax lien, usually within 3 to 6 months. That's usually how long the foreclosure process takes. In addition with that, we're also going to be guaranteed an 18% interest rate. So we can go in and purchase these Class A tax liens or Class B tax liens that maybe have been bid down to a little bit lower interest rate. You know how that we've seen these banks buy these tax liens down to a low interest rate. Well, that's not going to matter to us if we're going to foreclose on it immediately, because once we foreclose on it, we're going to have to pay off any of those other delinquent taxes. And essentially, at that point, we're going to be making 18% interest rate off of our entire investment. So it gives a property owner the ability to make an investment and get a return on their investment in 4 to 6 months, earning 18%, and then be able to just continue redoing that. And then, of course, you always have the chance of getting in property as well.
Awesome. Well, the foreclosure side of it, when you do go through and initiate that process, yeah, like Steve said, there's a lot of power right there in in just the act of foreclosing. And part of the reason why we believe in tax sales so much is because we believe in that foreclosure. That foreclosure is the most powerful foreclosure. It's the most powerful foreclosure that the state has. And so it's really a benefit to us. It's something that we count on. We like the fact that it's there. I mean, it's what protects us as investors. And if we end up acquiring the property, it's what guarantees that the property is going to be ours. That they'll be able to transfer ownership. That'll be ours. It won't have anything else attached to the property. It's because of that power. So. The foreclosure-ready nature, though, of the tax liens you're buying there is one of the strategies that you can employ with secondary liens. Or if you had a lien let's say that you bought one that was already earning a high interest rate return, you could hang on to it. and wait for it to redeem. If it's already earning a high interest rate return, then that's essentially what you're after anyway. And so um, to to invest into secondary tax liens, though, I think the main point and the reason why it works out so well is for its simplicity. And that is, it's designed specifically for people that don't have a lot of time to spend researching all of the stuff with tax sales and trying to participate in the auctions. Secondary tax lien investing works really well for the person that wants those advantages and the benefits of tax liens. So they want an interest rate return of 9, 10%, 11% on a safe investment. You can even earn more than that with these, as we've mentioned. But ultimately, though, it's the ease of the process, and that is in large part due to our portfolio manager, Mark Blair, and the role that he plays in it. If you want, you can kind of tell them a little bit about how it all works here once with the members that we have here that work with them already.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what we're able to do is Mark is able to get an idea of what you're working with, what your goals are, and we're able to essentially go out there and find some good tax and certificates and put together a portfolio that'll essentially be exactly what you're looking for. And so what we're able to do is you can let us know, and we're able to go ahead and schedule this appointment with Mark. And usually when we're making offers of on these portfolios, in the future, we're going to have the ability on our website to just purchase these secondary liens directly off our website. But right now, as we're working with these banks and offering, essentially making offers on these portfolios, usually most of the students that we work with are usually going to need around $4,000 or $5,000 for us to be able to make an offer on one of the portfolios to one of these banks. But at that point, Mark's going to find out exactly what you're looking to do, and then we'll be able to go ahead and put together a portfolio for you, and then once those tax liens are transferred in your name, he's also going to help you through the foreclosure process. So he's going to, help you go through and do the deed applications and get those started and get these properties in the foreclosure process, and essentially help you throughout that entire time frame. I mean, really what we want to be able to do with this secondary or with these bank-owned tax liens is help investors purchase tax lien certificates and always be able to continue reinvesting. So you'll have tax liens that maybe pay off before they even finish the foreclosure. So they pay after 3 months. You can automatically put that tax lien certificate into another tax lien and continue earning the interest rate return, so that your money is never essentially, in limbo. One big problem in the past is you could purchase tax liens, but then if you redeemed early, you'd have to wait till the next sale before you could purchase another tax lien. With the secondaries, it gives you the ability to purchase these tax liens. Also, because we're purchasing these tax liens, we're trying to purchase them, or we're offering these tax liens at a discount, which means that you're able to get the tax lien for the redemption amount or less. So if we're able to get any additional discount, we pass that on to the investor. So there's chances where you could purchase tax liens and you already have some interest on that tax lien before you even purchased it.
Yeah, which is ideal. You won't find a lot of opportunities like that. Also, secondary tax liens are something that I don't know that you would want to get necessarily just anywhere. And the reason I say that is one of the things that we're good at is we're good at researching investments, we're good at analyzing liens and deeds, and we're good at picking them out. And so one of the things I think that we offer is that we actually care about our people, and we want them to make money, we want them to be successful, and everything we do is to help that process along. So when we go to pick out secondary liens, we try to pick out the liens we think are going to work out best. We try to pick out the liens that are going to offer the most profitability. And the reality of it is, I don't know that everybody out there in the world is going to do that. You wish you could say that they would, but you know how people are and how it is with money. So I think that's one of the things that we can offer people as well, is that we do care about their overall success. Like Steve mentioned before, we have a lot of success stories, and we have a lot of success stories because, I think because we care. Because we care about it, we want to make it simple for people, we want to answer questions, we just want to see people do well with it, which is ultimately, what matters to us. So,
Definitely. I mean, any investment that we recommend to you would be a investment that we would recommend to ourselves, that we purchase ourselves. So there's nothing that, we would say, oh yeah, that's something that I would invest in, that I wouldn't invest in, or that I wouldn't recommend my family to invest into. And I think that's really kind of what sets us apart. In fact, with secondary liens in particular, we had company after company who over the years, over the 10, 12 years we've done seminars that, wanted to offer secondary liens to our students. And every time we looked into it, they were essentially offering what me and Shay consider to be junk or toxic tax liens, or just not that great of investments. And so when we did, created and helped put together this secondary strategy, or these bank-owned strategy, we essentially that was our goal in mind, is we need to make sure that these tax liens are, grade A, grade B, type tax lien certificates, high quality tax liens that would be tax liens that we'd invest in ourselves. I mean, it doesn't do us any good to help you purchase tax liens and you not make money on it. We want to be able to help you purchase tax liens and then go out there and purchase tax liens over and over again, so that you just continue able to build whatever income that you're looking for, or your retirement account, or really just kind of depending on the individual investor's desire.
Yeah. Now, I think whatever your investment strategy is, or whatever it is that you're after, whether it's tax liens, tax deeds, or redemption deeds, and whatever your buying method might be, if what you want to do is make money with this, if what you want to do is start investing into liens or deeds, then what you should do, if you're not already a member with tax sale support, is join the website, join basically tax sale support, which includes a number of things. Not only are you going to have access to the website, but it also includes access to our portfolio manager, the portfolio support. Something to keep in mind is that yeah, the portfolio manager also wants to work with the same individuals over and over again, and so yeah, that's something also that's different. I think you'll find it's part of the reason why we enjoy working with Mark, is because he legitimately cares as well. He wants to have people making money, and he wants to be able to work with people long term. So I think it makes for better opportunities there. You're also going to have access to all of the tax sale lists that we have, which are a lot. We have all of those different types of lists, whether it's online, whether it's over the counter, whether it's for live auctions. We have all of them. It's also access to us for investment support. So people ask us about investments all the time. And also the access to other types of trainings that we do, like access to we do 3-day workshops in Las Vegas now, so we can work with people, in small groups, so we can work with them more closely. So I think that there's a lot there for people. I mean, there's obviously so much more than that. There's so much training materials, and there's so many different things that we can include, that are included with membership, because it's so much more than just that. But that's really where it begins, and that's where we can start to help you, narrow down where you're going to get started, and how to best help you. By the way, there will be a replay available. I just wanted to get that out. We'll have that available here. We'll get working on that tonight. So if anybody has any questions here, we know we've gone kind of long here tonight, but yeah, on what it includes, let us know. We'd be happy to answer any questions here on it. And I think going to tax sale support is probably the easiest way to sign up.
Yeah, and what we can do is we can send out an email afterwards. We'll include some special offers for you as well, some of our eBooks and things like that you can download, and maybe a couple of lists and stuff. And we can also set up, if you have questions before you want to sign up for any reason, you can always set up a strategy call. So I'll go ahead and send out a special link to this group to set up a strategy call, where we'll give you a call, spend 15-20 minutes with you and get you pointed in the right direction. We'll kind of really what it is, it's called the strategy and investor profile recommendation. So what we do is we'll talk with you, get an idea of where you're at, and then we can give you an investor profile recommendation. Me and Shade have put together 8 different investor profile types that will essentially help narrow down your strategy and help you pick a great area, or the right area to get started with. So definitely, if you have any questions, if you're interested about tax lien and deed investing, I don't think you're going to find another resource out there that's going to be as committed to you and that's going to be able to offer you the same type of value. If you can find one, let me know. I'll give you a 30-day gift certificate to Taxel support. We will, because you're not going to find one. What we're offering here is essentially, a great program to help people, investors, go out there and get started doing tax liens and deeds. And your success is our success. That's the reason that we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree completely. Yeah, and definitely keep an eye out for the special offer. I think we've got a lot of people that have stayed with us throughout this whole webinar. We'll see if we can get a special offer out to everybody that attended as a way to say thank you for doing so. So, yeah, we do appreciate everybody.
Thank you guys and have a great evening.
All right, we'll see you later.